What is Canada hiding? This video will show you a medical horror the government doesn't want you to know about, and a journalistic horror story. Stick around to learn how the media manipulates you. So we're looking at this story, Not Budging. Meet London's 9-year and counting hospital patient, staying put in a hospital he admits he doesn't need in a standoff over his care wants. Roger Foley is an extreme example of a bed blocker. The story was reprinted the next day in the National Post and the Ottawa Citizen with the headline, 9 years and counting, man refuses to leave hospital. And in the Daily Press, man has been in hospital for 9 years because of a feud over home care. So this story is written by award-winning reporter Jennifer Beeman, uses an interview with Roger Foley himself, and contains some official stats. And yet, the story is a massive crock of shit. Because 4 days earlier, the real story came out. Man with disabilities begs hospital to stop pushing suicide. And soon after, these stories appeared. A Canadian hospital is slowly starving and abusing a disabled man to death. Brother of disabled man to Canadian hospital. He's dying in front of you. Disabled Canadian man fighting for his life while staff pressure him with MAiD. That's medical assistance in dying. Man trapped in hospital for 9 years exposes staff for saying he should end his own life. And I've been trapped in a hospital for 9 years and staff tell me the way out is killing myself. The details are barbaric. The hospital wants Roger dead, so they started with some psychological pressure and sleep deprivation tactics fitting of the Guantanamo Bay prison. They wake him up regularly, with fake wellness checks, then offer him assisted suicide. Even at 3:45 a.m. Roger recorded many of these exchanges, and the Dallas Express includes some of those audio files in its article. I'll put a link in the description and pinned comments if you want to play them. They're creepy, and it must be terrifying to know that the people you depend on to care for you want you dead. For 9 years, hospital staff has known that one of the nasty symptoms of Roger's condition is extreme light sensitivity. Bright light causes intense pain and temporary blindness. So on May the 7th, the hospital replaced the low-intensity amber lighting in Roger's room with high-intensity halogen and fluorescent lights, knowing they torture him every time they flick the switch. But it gets worse! Roger also has some difficulty swallowing. He can't eat or drink while lying down, so staff has to crank him into an upright position using this harness. But since it hurts Roger's eyes so much, when they turn on the lights to come in to feed him, they just stop feeding him. They only fed him intravenously for a few weeks until his veins collapsed, and then starved him completely for weeks. Jennifer Beeman mentions none of this in her story. My guess is that she never talked to Roger Foley before publishing her hit piece, and this interview with the London Free Press might have been back from 2018. As usual, the propaganda is at the beginning, since most people don't read to the end. Put the facts at the end of the story to cover your butt. It could say, a hospital he doesn't need, but adding, he admits, suggests he's guilty of something, like he knows he's scamming the system. The article starts with some filler, mentioning Donald Trump, who has nothing to do with the story, but maybe the reader's dislike of Trump will spill over to Roger. The article leans heavily on Rosalie Wyonch from the C.D. Howe Institute. A journalist can usually find some expert to push their agenda. Now, Wyonch is a smart economist, but I don't think she's met Roger. And surprise, Roger is also a smart economist. He had a big job at the Royal Bank. You wouldn't know, since Beeman treats him more like a medical statistic than a human being. If Beeman had talked to him, she could have also had the economic facts. In fact, Barbara Kay reported them later in the week. Kay notes the hospital claims that Roger's costing them at least $1,500 a day, $548,000 a year, ultimately paid by the Ontario taxpayers. 10 hours of home care a day at $38 an hour would cost $138,700 a year. They could upgrade to registered practical nurses who know more about Roger's condition at $45 an hour, $164,000 a year, still a massive savings. The issue is that Roger needs to be able to hire his own home care workers. Jennifer Beeman writes, before his hospital admission in 2016, he claims the care he received was deeply inadequate and a contributory factor to his hospitalization. What an understatement! He was hospitalized because his home care worker messed up his food so badly that he got food poisoning. In previous disasters, another worker almost killed him, giving him the wrong medications. Some of them fell asleep on the job. There was a kitchen fire when one of them left the stove on and fell asleep. Other workers would drag him across the floor or bump him into walls when moving him. When these details are hidden, the reader gets the impression that Roger is just an annoying Karen. Then it goes on to say he wants to hire home care workers of his own choosing, almost as if they were his employees. But it's not the norm. Now that's funny because that Dallas Express article we saw earlier actually provides a link to a Government of Ontario website for exactly the service that Roger wanted. They are literally advertising to find disabled people to sign up for the program.
Are you living with a physical disability and desire more flexibility and control with your caregiver or attendant? Available province-wide, the Direct Funding Program enables adults with physical disabilities to receive monthly funds to hire the attendants of their choice. Take charge of your life. Hire your own attendants. Live your life with more choice, control, and independence. For more information about the Direct Funding Program, please visit dfontario.ca/df.
Oops. Next up, Foley declined to give permission to his doctors or care team to speak with the Free Press. Oh, the comment just demonizes Roger as uncooperative. Nobody's disputing Roger's medical condition. And remember, hospital staff wants Roger dead. They have an incentive to badmouth him and lie to the press. Then the article suggests that Roger move into this long-term care facility, where the level of care and quality of life would be lower than home care. Cheaper for the government. Nice that the journalist would tell Roger how to live his life. With the right home care, workers could crank him into a wheelchair and he could meet people in his apartment building, or even go outside with his attendants. And right now the government has an incentive to give Roger what he wants. Remember, the government would save $400,000 a year with directed home care. But if he moves into St. Joseph's, which is cheaper, the government will never gain anything by giving him home care later. So Roger will be surrounded by Alzheimer's patients for the rest of his life. This part mentions Roger's lawsuit. It's the only place in the article that mentions the harassment over medically assisted dying. But that only includes the period from 2016 to 2018. Jennifer Beeman writes that the lawsuit was struck in its entirety last year. This is another gross error of omission. As Canadian lawyer Meg explains, numerous defendants were named with a wide variety of complaints and allegations, all under a single lawsuit. And in December 2023, the court dismissed his case against the federal and provincial government. However, Foley was granted leave to amend certain claims against the remaining defendants. So after 6 years, the judge is saying that Roger has a case against some of the defendants, but first he would have to reimburse the government for about $100,000 of their lawyer fees. So he actually had a case, he just ran out of time and money. And Jennifer Beeman knew it because she'd covered the story. LHCS is the hospital, London Health Science Centre, and the Centre for Independent Living in Toronto is the organization that rejected Roger's request for direct funding. Finally, at the end, Beeman quotes Michael Alexander, who was helping Roger. Why hasn't anyone stepped back and said, why can't we help Roger get self-directed home care so we can send him home? Nobody's doing that. Nobody's ever done that. The system has consistently let him down. Now, if Beeman just started the article with those ideas, the reader would have had a completely different reaction. The politicians could have given Roger what he wanted 9 years ago and saved $5 million in hospital costs. But instead, they paid lawyers money to fight him in court for years. People should be furious with the government. Yet with Beeman's reporting, some people hate Roger. This article highlights some reactions. Just wheel him home. Some people accuse Foley of being selfish, or worse. I mean, he gets food at the hospital. What more does he need? Damn, people need those beds. What a selfish a-hole. Now let's look at news sources that actually covered the real issue: coercive euthanasia. This story from the Dallas Express was the earliest, May 29th, 4 days before the Beeman hit piece. Logan Washburn included the audio clips of the suicide conversations. This follow-up story was also from Logan, who had previously covered the issue about Roger and other Canadians in The Federalist. This one is from the U.S. group National Right to Life Coalition. Megan Schrader is a professor in Austin, Texas. Claire Marie Murkowski is Canadian. This is LifeSite News, not to be confused with US-based lifenews.com, which covered the story August 7th. This was from the Daily Mail, which has covered the issue before. And this is from AOL UK. Board Panda is a news service from Lithuania. Donata Liskaskady is Lithuanian. She starts, Roger Foley is trying to get someone to listen. But no mainstream Canadian news outlets were listening this time. I've been following Roger's story for years, and the most supportive mainstream sources are foreign, like the New York Post. And Roger got coverage in the British press following his plea to the British Parliament in 2024. Among the top Canadian outlets, the National Post has had some previous coverage. Here's one from 2022. Sick veteran offered assisted death instead of saving treatment. It only mentions Roger in regards to an Associated Press article. They didn't do their own article, but use an old photo that they used in an article from 2018. As far as I could tell, the Toronto Star and CTV News haven't mentioned Roger since 2018. CBC only mentioned Roger's address to a parliamentary committee in 2020. And Global News and the Globe and Mail are missing in action. My guess is that most Canadian editors like the suicide laws and don't want you to know the horrors and abuses that come with them. So before I tell you what happened to Roger Foley, please like and leave a comment. YouTube is also touchy about MAiD. It suggested my last video about Roger to only 121 people, compared to 18,800 for my video, Eat Bugs, Save Jews, NPR is Fake News. So updates. Jennifer Beeman quit the London Free Press. She's going to law school. Good luck, Jen. After being starved and dehydrated for much of the summer, Roger got help from a non-profit organization, LifeCare Network, which now sends personal support workers into the hospital to do the jobs that the hospital staff refuses to do. LifeCare got Roger's specialized soft lighting back. Well done, LifeCare, but what a disgrace for the Ontario healthcare system. And LifeCare needs donations, so if you want to help out, you can pause the video for Roger's info, and I'll send links in a pinned comment and the description area. And I wrote to the Premier, the Health Minister, the Leader of the Opposition, and my own Member of Provincial Parliament, asking them to approve Roger's direct home care. 4 weeks later, I've only received auto responses. Damn, I was really hoping they would have clicked the video link and left a nasty comment. And for another example of media outlets stepping on the little guy, check out my video, African Farmer Battles BBC Racists. Just click the box in the top left if you're on YouTube.